This case, Marcia, for our viewers, just a refresher, happened in 1996. This little girl, obviously very beautiful, was a pageant queen. The parents woke up. Was it actually Christmas morning? It was right around Christmas. Mm-hmm. December 26th, my team is telling me, and couldn't find Jon Benet. So they look all around the house. They find a ransom note, a weird ransom note demanding $118,000 for her safe return. And they called the police. The police went over there. They sat with the parents. They searched the house, didn't find anything. And then the police said, why don't you, to the dad, take a closer look, see if anything looks out of order in the house. And he found Jon Benet downstairs dead on a blanket in like long johns. And it did appear that there was some evidence of sexual assault, though no semen was found. So that's relevant on the DNA front. But she had been strangled by a garrote, right? Which I think is just any sort of rope or strangulation device. And that in particular, Marcia, I think is what they're looking at now for potential DNA testing. Oh my God, it's almost 30 years now since that case happened. I mean, think of what's happened in the DNA field.
Right. So now we have touch DNA, which is, back in my day, you basically had to have huge droplets of blood that contained high quality DNA. And the only form of testing was restriction fragment length polymorphism, affectionately known as RFLP, which no one uses anymore. The testing now is all PCR-based polymerase chain reaction, which means that they amplify tiny, tiny amounts of DNA in order to produce a result. And the fears that they had raised before about that form of testing causing contamination or amplifying contamination have now been pretty much laid to rest. And so you can now, it's been advanced to the point where they can literally lift enough DNA if you touch a surface. Not always, but if you touch a surface, it's possible to find enough DNA to test. And that means that with the sensitivity of the DNA testing today, they may come up with something better, and they may come up with results that they couldn't come up with before. However, the fear I have is that the amounts of DNA that they have are so small, they will get consumed in the testing. And you will not be able to go back and test when we have even better DNA methods of analysis, which we certainly will, because they keep advancing like every 5 seconds, it feels like. They really are. The field is burgeoning. So, there's a danger in going after whatever samples they have right now with the tools we have today, knowing that we may have better ones tomorrow. So I hope that they're judicious about this. I'm glad they're retesting. There have been so many stories circulating about this case that it would be lovely. It would be a relief to finally get some definitive answers here.
Right. The dad in this case, Mark, he did not want this to happen. He thinks this is kind of a cover to give it to this cold case review group. I think he just wanted to work with private DNA labs. He doesn't think that the state has done a good job investigating this case, and he doesn't trust them to take it from here. I mean, here we are 25 years later, they haven't solved it. So I get that too. He basically said, this sounds like more of the same. That's not what we need. It's a good effort by their PR department. That's what's happening here.
I don't disagree with him. I mean, he was savage and unfairly so during the entire thing. I mean, first of all, finding your daughter has got to be the most unimaginable event. And then being accused, and then watching your wife, her mother, kind of die from the accusations and the heartache and in a slow-moving car wreck of an investigation. I mean, for those who aren't familiar with it, I mean, the investigation itself was bungled in so many different ways, and so many different people were playing politics with it, that I can imagine that the father is angry, or at least very suspicious of the motivations at this point.
You remember, Patsy Ramsey died after 10 years. Jon Benet was killed in 96. She died 10 years later, the mom. And then he, for a while, was dating Beth Holloway. Remember that? Natalie Holloway's mom. It was like it was a crazy cable news event, because it was like, wait a minute, Greta Van Susteren show is like going crazy. It was like all of her biggest stories coming together at once. They did find DNA back at the time. Well, not at the time, but in 2008. new DNA testing technology had been developed, and that allowed them to test dead skin cells, like you said, Marcia. I think this is touch DNA on objects at crime scenes, and they tested it, and they came back on a pajama legging with a positive for at least one unknown male's DNA, possibly even two. It was after that that the DA wrote a letter to Jon Ramsey stating that her office does not consider him or his wife Patsy or anyone in their immediate family to be under suspicion at all anymore for the death of Jon Benet. And so now they're looking at, like I say, maybe there was that touch DNA on the garrote, but we don't know. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe the guy was wearing gloves. And on the other hand, though, maybe some guy did leave DNA, and maybe that guy's in the system now where he wasn't in 2008.
Which
So
by the way, happens with great frequency as well. That's not very rare. And remember, as an interlude here at one point, there was also the man who was extradited from overseas after he confessed to this, and for a while, the rumors were rampant that they'd finally solved it, and turned out he was just nuts.
He was a nut. He was Carr. Wasn't that his name? John Carr or something? Yeah. I remember that, Mark. Yeah, that was that when, and it was really funny when that came out and he surfaced. I thought, this is a crank. This is one of those these cases frequently, and they bought it. They bought it. That's called desperation. The thing that worries me about the DNA analysis in this case, the evidentiary issues, is that it was such a badly handled crime scene. Imagine that the police go in to search and never go to the basement. And that's why the father wound up finding her body, is because they didn't even bother to go to the basement to search. And then they start to remove things from her body, the garrote, et cetera, and they're moving things around. A blanket is wrapped around at one point. It's a mess. I can imagine that even if they do finally zero in on a suspect, it's going to be very hard to convict given the way it was handled. So it's just a tough
Boulder
case.
police did not distinguish themselves in this case. I mean, the fact that it hasn't been solved is an embarrassment. Imagine if you could buy an Italian sports car or your dream home for less than $1 a day. Well, you can't quite do that, but you can own an X chair, and that is the office chair I personally use, and arguably the finest office chair in the world, for only $20 a month. Yes, for less than $1 a day, you can own something that is going to make the hours spent at your desk 1,000 times more comfortable and productive. And unlike a car, this one's going to massage you. This one's going to heat you up. It's going to cool you down. It's going to help you be more productive at work. Not only do I love my X chair for all these reasons, but Abby has one, and she loves hers too. From the moment I first sat down in my X chair, I did immediately feel the difference. Trust me, once you sit down in an X chair, you'll understand. It's an immediate game changer for you. There's an X chair for every style, for every budget. They even offer that built-in massage, as I mentioned, and heating and cooling. Now we're going into the warm months, and depends on what your room is, right? Maybe it doesn't get heated so well. You want the cooling. You want the heat. Maybe, you know what I'm saying. And all for less than $1 a day. Check out all the options and their amazing financing plans at xchairmk.com. The letter X, chair, the letters MK.com. No other chair can compare to the X chair. Go to xchairmk.com now. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.